I invite you to be seated as we read the long gospel lesson. We will read the entire 9th chapter of the Gospel of John, the story entitled in our Sunday school memory, The Healing of the Blind Man. This story has been described by two biblical scholars as both a tension-filled drama with as many as 6 scene changes, says Fred Craddock, and as a story filled with humor and irony. A funny thing happened on the way to the cross, says Raymond Brown. I invite you to hear this gospel lesson today as described by Craddock and Brown. Listen for the drama, the irony and the humor. Think about how the characters use these tools to convey a message. Think about what that message might be, or might there be more than one message? Finally, as you listen, consider what part you might play in the drama. Who are you? Who are we in this story? The words that you hear with your ears are the story as translated by Eugene Peterson in The Message, a translation in contemporary language. If you wish to hear the story with your eyes also, you may follow along in the bulletin, which uses the NRSV. As you listen, hear this story not only as a miracle or a healing story, but also as a story that points us, especially during the season of Lent, to who Jesus is. This is our story of moving from darkness into the light of Christ. Now hear the gospel according to John, the 9th chapter. Walking down the street, Jesus saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, causing him to be born blind?" Jesus said, "You're asking the wrong question. You're looking for someone to blame. There is no such cause and effect here. Look instead for what God can do. We need to be energetically at work for the one who sent me here, working while the sun shines. When night falls, the workday is over. For as long as I am in the world, there's plenty of light. I am the world's light." Jesus said this, then spit in the dust, made a clay paste with the saliva, rubbed the paste on the blind man's eyes, and said, "Go, wash at the pool of Siloam." Siloam means sent. The man went and washed and saw. Now Jesus leaves the scene and it changes. Soon the town was buzzing. His relatives and those who year after year had seen him as a blind man begging were saying, "Isn't this the man we knew who sat there and begged?" Others said, "It's him all right." But others said, "Nah, it's not the same man at all. It just looks like him." The man said, "It's me, the very one." They said, "How did you get your eyes opened?" "A man named Jesus made a paste and rubbed it on my eyes and told me go to Siloam and wash. I did what he said. When I washed, I saw." "So where is he?" "I don't know." So we have another scene change, and Jesus is still somewhere. I don't know. They marched the man to the Pharisees. This day, when Jesus made the paste and healed his blindness, was the Sabbath. The Pharisees grilled him again on how he had come to see. The man who once was blind said, "He put clay paste on my eyes, and I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "Obviously, this man can't be from God. He doesn't keep the Sabbath." Others countered, "How can a bad man do miraculous, God-revealing things like this?" They were split in their ranks. They came back at the blind man. "You're the expert. He opened your eyes. What do you say about him?" "He's a prophet." And then the scene changes again. And as it does it, I wonder if Jesus is hearing all this chatter. The Judeans didn't believe it, didn't believe the man was blind to begin with. So they called the parents of the man now bright-eyed with sight. They asked them, "Is this your son, the one you say was born blind? So how is it that he now sees?" The parents said, "We know he is our son, and we know he was born blind. But we don't know how he came to see, haven't a clue about who opened his eyes. Why don't you ask him? He's a grown man and can speak for himself." His parents were talking like this because they were intimidated by the Judean leaders, who had already decided that anyone who took a stand saying that this was the Messiah would be kicked out of the meeting place, the synagogue. That's why his parents said, "Ask him, he's a grown man." Now he turned back to the man who was blind. They came back to the man a second time, the man who had been blind, and told him, "Give credit to God. We know this man is an impostor." The man who could now see replied, "I know nothing about that one way or another, but I know one thing for sure. I was blind. I now see." They said, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" "I've told you over and over and over, and you haven't listened. Why do you want to hear it again? Are you eager to become his disciples?" With that, they jumped all over him. "You might be a disciple of that man, but we're disciples of Moses. We know for sure that God spoke to Moses, but we have no idea where this man even comes from." The once blind man replied, "This is amazing. You claim to know nothing about him, but in fact he opened my eyes. It's well known that God isn't at the beck and call of sinners, but listens carefully to anyone who lives in reverence and does his will. That someone opened the eyes of a man born blind has never been heard of, ever. If this man didn't come from God, he wouldn't be able to do anything." They said, "You're nothing but dirt. How dare you take that tone with us?" Then they threw him out onto the street. And now here comes Jesus, back on stage, perfect timing. Jesus heard that they had thrown the once blind man out and went and found him. Jesus asked him, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" The man said, "Point him out to me, sir, so that I can believe in him." Jesus said, "You're looking right at him. Don't you recognize my voice?" "Master, I believe," the man said, and worshiped him. Jesus then said, "I came into the world to bring everything into the clear light of day, making all the distinctions clear, so that those who have never seen will see, and those who have made a great pretense of seeing will be exposed as blind." And now the final scene, a confrontation, more ammunition as Jesus moves on to Jerusalem. Some Pharisees overheard him and said, "Does that mean you're calling us blind?" Jesus said, "If you were really blind, you would be blameless. But since you claim to see everything so well, you're accountable for every fault and failure." The Gospel of the Lord. Okay, after hearing that drama play out with all its twists and turns, let's go back to the question about finding ourselves in the story. What part would you play in this drama? Are you the blind man? Blind from birth, unable to see anything, having to beg to accept charity instead of supporting yourself, paying your own way? Are you the blind man sitting there every day, almost invisible, an object of ridicule by some and blame from others? I'm sure if you're like me, some days you're feeling like the blind man. I know I sure am. And on other days, I'm a disciple, walking with Jesus down the road, wanting to hear more about who he is and what he's doing here, wanting to have a theological discussion with this rabbi, this teacher who called me to follow him. So, Jesus, I ask, who sinned? Who was to blame for that beggar's blindness? What did he do to deserve the punishment? Or was it his parents? Inquiring minds want to know. Doesn't our human nature want to place blame on someone or something else? We love the blame game. It's not my fault. I hear Flip Wilson. Do you remember him? If you're old enough, you do. The devil made me do it. Somebody else's fault. I suspect we probably wouldn't want to be Jesus for lots of reasons, I'm sure. But in this story, Jesus refuses to go where the disciples want him to go. He says, guys, you're asking the wrong question. This isn't about blame. It's about what God can do. It's about what God can do. So instead of a moral or theological discussion on the effects of sin on our health, let's help this man. Might any of us play the role of the Pharisees? Remember, they're the church leaders, responsible to see that the laws are followed and responsible to deal with those who are outside the law. They know what's right, and they know how to punish those who don't follow the law. They're powerful folks. Barbara Brown Taylor suggests that, yes, we might even find ourselves so occupied with our own modern version of ritual purity and preserving the law, especially the one that says we've always done it this way, you know, that we fail to see what really matters. We live in darkness, blind to what's happening all around us. But John inserts a little interesting twist into this story, letting us think that maybe being a Pharisee is not all bad. One group of Pharisees is adamant. This person who healed on the Sabbath cannot be the Messiah. He sinned. He broke the law. So we know that he's not the one sent by God. But some others said, well, how can a bad man do such miraculous, God-revealing things like healing? Maybe he is from God. Change of heart, maybe. If you're into humor, you might see yourself as the parents. They don't want to see anything. Don't talk to us, talk to our son. We know nothing. How it was done, who did it. All we know is that this man, our son, was born blind and now he sees. Ask him. We don't want trouble. We like things the way they are. It's comfortable in this community. Don't rock the boat. Go talk to him. And if we're the parents, we can also be the neighbors. Do you think that's him? Maybe it is, or maybe it's just someone who looks like him. I'm not sure. Don't ask us. We don't want to get involved. We see enough already, let me tell you. So who are we? What is our story of blindness? Are we so like the disciples, so worried about whose fault it is, who's to blame that we're blind to the needs of others? Do we ignore the hungry, the homeless, blame them or their families? Do we just see lives that seem to have no meaning? People who just can't stay away from drugs or booze or whatever? What about those with physical disabilities? Would we rather keep them hidden in their own place? The list could go on. Teen moms, wounded soldiers, those who have no health care, anyone different from us, not our fault, not our problem. And Jesus says, stop it. Stop it. Forget those questions. Stop pointing fingers of blame and see as I see. See children of God who need to be fed. Go and feed them. See people living in darkness? Go be light in their dark places. Stop being like the Pharisees, Jesus says. Stop being caught up in all the rules, the right way to do things, the way we've always done it, of course. Are those rules more important than feeding the hungry and caring for the lost and lonely? I once was blind, but now I see. What else is more important than having our eyes opened to the world around us? Disciples, Pharisees, parents, neighbors who don't want to upset the apple cart, don't want to change the unfair system, who just want to be comfortable, us. We're the folks that Jesus speaks to, and pretty harshly, I suggest. If you're really blind, you'd be blameless. But since you claim to see everything so well, you're accountable for every fault and failure. People of God, this is our story. We are all of those people. We're just as blind as if we were the beggar sitting by the roadside. Jesus says today, take off those rose-colored glasses. Join the man who once was blind but now sees. Let Jesus touch our eyes today and we'll see the light of the world. Come to the table and receive Jesus' gift of light and life in the bread and wine, Jesus' body and blood. And then in thankfulness for the gift of the light of Christ, go out the doors and live as children of God, washed in the water of baptism, fed by the Spirit, and shining in the light of Christ. I am the light of the world, Jesus says. Follow me. Amen.